The night was quiet on Earth's orbital station. Most workers had gone home hours ago. But Kang Do-hyun was still there, bent over his desk, checking numbers on his screen. He was an aerospace engineer, 28 years old, and he loved his work more than sleep. The station floated above Earth like a metal flower. Through the windows, Do-hyun could see the blue planet below, wrapped in clouds and light. It was beautiful. He never got tired of looking at it. He rubbed his tired eyes and reached for his cold coffee. Just a few more calculations, he told himself. Then he would go home to his small apartment and sleep. That was when the lights flickered. Do-hyun looked up. The lights flickered again, then turned red. An alarm started screaming through the station. He jumped from his chair, his heart beating fast. This was not a drill. Something was wrong. He ran to the main window and stopped breathing. A ship was appearing in the darkness of space. But it was not a human ship. It was massive. Bigger than anything Do-hyun had ever seen. It was black and silver, shaped like a curved blade, and it seemed to drink the light around it. Strange symbols glowed on its surface in a language no human could read. The Valori. Everyone knew about the Valori Empire. They had made contact with Earth 30 years ago. They were an ancient species, millions of years old. With technology that made humans look like children playing with toys, they were beautiful and terrifying. They ruled half the galaxy, and they did not think much of humans. Do-hyun watched as the enormous ship moved closer. He could feel his hands shaking. The Valori never came to Earth. They had no reason to. Humans had nothing they wanted, so why were they here? The station's communication system crackled. A voice came through, cold and smooth like ice sliding on glass. It spoke in perfect Korean. "Attention, human station. This is the imperial vessel of Her Majesty, Empress Lyra of the Valori Empire. We come with a summons. One of your kind has been requested by name. He will present himself immediately, or your planet will face consequences." Do-hyun felt his blood turn cold. A summons? Who could possibly? The human known as Kang Do-hyun will board our vessel within 1 hour. There will be no negotiation. There will be no refusal. The communication ended. Do-hyun stood frozen. His name. They had said his name. But that was impossible. He was nobody. He was just an engineer who liked numbers and machines. He had never met an alien in his life. He had never done anything important. Why would the Valori Empress want him? Within minutes, his communicator was exploding with calls. His supervisor, the station commander, government officials. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. What did you do? Why do they want you? Do-hyun had no answers. The hour passed like a dream, or maybe a nightmare. Do-hyun found himself standing at the docking port, wearing his simple work clothes, carrying nothing. 100 people watched him with fear and confusion in their eyes. Some looked at him like he was already dead. Maybe he was. The Valori ship extended a docking tube to the station. It connected with a soft hiss. And then the door opened. 2 Valori soldiers stood on the other side. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with silver skin that seemed to glow softly. Their eyes were solid colors. One had eyes like gold coins, the other like deep purple gems. They wore armor that looked like liquid metal, and they carried weapons that hummed with energy. They looked at Do-hyun like he was an insect. "You are Kang Do-hyun," one of them said. It was not a question. "Yes," Do-hyun managed to say. His voice was small. "Follow." They turned and walked into the docking tube. Do-hyun looked back at the humans watching him. No one said goodbye. No one wished him luck. They were all too afraid. He took a deep breath and followed the aliens. The inside of the Valori ship was like nothing he had ever seen. The walls were made of something that looked like crystal and metal mixed together. Light came from everywhere and nowhere. The air smelled strange, like flowers and electricity. Everything was beautiful and cold. Do-hyun walked between the 2 soldiers, feeling very small and very human. Other Valori passed them in the corridors. Some ignored him completely. Others looked at him with disgust, like someone had brought garbage onto their clean ship. He tried not to let it hurt. But it did. They walked for what felt like hours. The ship was enormous, a city floating in space. Do-hyun saw rooms filled with strange machines, gardens with plants that glowed in the dark, and windows that showed the stars spinning slowly outside. Finally, they entered a long corridor with fewer lights. It was quieter here, more private. That was when Do-hyun felt it. Someone was watching him. He turned his head slightly and saw a shadow move behind a pillar. For just a moment, he caught a glimpse of a face, a female Valori, younger than the others, with skin like moonlight and eyes the color of violet flowers. She was staring at him with an expression he could not read. Then she was gone, disappearing into the darkness like smoke. Do-hyun's heart beat faster. Who was that? Why was she hiding? And why did she look at him like she knew him? He had no time to think about it. The soldiers pushed him forward, and he stumbled into a large room. They told him to wait here. Then they left, and the door closed behind them with a sound like a tomb ceiling. Do-hyun was alone. He looked around the room. It was simple compared to the rest of the ship, just walls, a bench, and a small window showing the stars. A waiting room. Or maybe a cell. He sat on the bench and put his head in his hands. 12 hours ago, he had been checking calculations for a new satellite. Now, he was on an alien ship, summoned by an Empress who ruled half the galaxy. And he had no idea why. He thought about his life on Earth, his small apartment, his parents in Busan, his friends who he promised to meet next weekend. Would he ever see any of them again? Probably not. Do-hyun closed his eyes and tried to calm his breathing. Whatever was coming, he would face it. He was human. Humans were good at surviving. It was the one thing they did better than anyone else in the galaxy. He just hoped that would be enough. Outside the window, the stars continued their endless dance. And somewhere in the ship, a princess with violet eyes was making her way toward the throne room, her heart full of fear and hope. The human had come. Now everything would change. Do-hyun did not know how long he waited in that small room. Time moved differently on the alien ship. There were no clocks, no windows to show day or night, just the endless hum of machines and the cold silence of space. When the door finally opened, he jumped to his feet. 4 Valori soldiers entered. They were different from the ones before. Their armor was more decorated, with golden symbols on their chests. These were not regular soldiers. These were royal guards. "The Empress will see you now," one of them said. "Walk with respect. Speak only when spoken to. And do not look directly at Her Majesty, unless she permits it." Do-hyun nodded. His mouth was too dry to speak. They led him through corridors that grew larger and more beautiful with each step. The walls changed from crystal to something that looked like liquid gold. The ceilings rose higher and higher until they disappeared into darkness. And everywhere, there were Valori nobles watching him pass. They whispered to each other behind delicate fans made of light. They laughed at him with musical voices. They pointed at his simple human clothes, his messy hair, his tired face. To them, he was entertainment. A strange little creature brought before their queen. Do-hyun kept his eyes forward and his back straight. He would not give them the satisfaction of seeing his fear. Finally, they reached a door so large it could fit a building. It was made of something that looked like frozen starlight, and it was carved with scenes of war and victory. This was the throne room of the Valori Empire. The doors opened without a sound. Do-hyun stepped inside and forgot how to breathe. The throne room was not a room, it was a world. The ceiling was so high that it had its own sky, complete with clouds that drifted slowly across a purple horizon. The floor was made of black glass that reflected everything like a dark mirror. And at the far end, sitting on a throne that seemed to be carved from a dying star, was Empress Lyra. She was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Do-hyun had ever seen. Her skin was silver, like moonlight given form. Her hair was white and flowed around her like smoke, moving even though there was no wind. Her eyes were solid gold, and they burned with an intelligence that had seen civilizations rise and fall. She wore a dress made of what looked like woven darkness, with stars trapped in its fabric. She was ancient, she was powerful, and she was looking directly at him. Do-hyun walked forward on shaking legs. The throne room was filled with hundreds of Valori nobles, all watching him. Some looked curious. Most looked disgusted. A few looked hungry. Like predators watching prey. He stopped at the base of the throne and dropped to his knees. It seemed like the right thing to do. For a long moment, there was only silence. Then the Empress spoke. Her voice was soft, but it filled the entire room like thunder. Kang Do-hyun. Human. Aerospace engineer. 28 years old. No family connections of importance. No military experience. No political value. She tilted her head slightly, studying him like a scientist studying a strange bug. And yet, you are the human my daughter cannot stop speaking of. Do-hyun's heart stopped. Daughter? He looked up without thinking, then quickly looked back down when a guard growled at him. I do not understand, Your Majesty, he said. His voice was barely a whisper. I have never met your daughter. I have never met any Valori before today. The Empress made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was cold and sharp, like breaking glass. Is that what you believe? She raised one elegant hand and waved it through the air. A hologram appeared between them, showing a scene from Earth. It was Seoul. 2 years ago. Do-hyun recognized the subway station near his apartment. In the hologram, he saw himself running down the platform. And he saw a woman lying on the tracks, unconscious, with a train coming fast. He remembered that day. A woman had fallen. No one else moved to help. Do-hyun had jumped down without thinking, grabbed her, and pulled her to safety with only seconds to spare. She had been strange, very tall, with unusual features and an accent he could not place. She said her name was Yuna, and she thanked him with tears in her eyes. Then she disappeared. He never saw her again. Yuna, he breathed. Her true name is Sarah, the Empress said. She is my only daughter, the heir to the Valori Empire. She visited your planet without permission, disguised as a human, because she was curious about your species. The hologram changed to show the woman's true form, silver skin, violet eyes, the same person Do-hyun had glimpsed in the corridor. Princess Sarah. She should have died that day, the Empress continued. Her disguise had weakened her. She could not save herself. But you, a human with nothing to gain, risked your life for a stranger. Do-hyun remembered how heavy she had felt, how his arms had ached, how the wind of the train had hit his back as he climbed out. He had not thought about it. He had just moved. She has not forgotten, the Empress said. For 2 years, she has spoken of the human who saved her. The human with kind eyes and warm hands. The human who smiled at her and asked if she was okay, then walked away without asking for anything in return. The nobles in the throne room began to whisper. Some looked shocked. Others looked angry. A princess, saved by a human? It was almost offensive. The Empress silenced them with a look. My daughter believes she loves you, human. The words hit Do-hyun like a physical blow. Love? The princess of an alien empire loved him? A man who could not even afford a nice apartment? That is why you are here, the Empress said. Her golden eyes grew colder. Not as a reward, not as a guest. You are here because I need to decide what to do with you. She leaned forward on her throne, and Do-hyun felt the weight of her attention like a mountain pressing on his chest. The Valori do not mix with lesser species. It has been our law for 1,000,000 years. My daughter's feelings are a sickness, a confusion that must be cured. And you, the source of that sickness, must be dealt with. Do-hyun understood now. He was not a guest. He was a problem to be solved. There are those in my court who say I should simply kill you, the Empress said calmly, as if discussing the weather. It would be easy. Clean. No one on your planet would dare to complain. She paused, letting the threat hang in the air. But my daughter has begged me to give you a chance, and despite my better judgment, I love my child. She sat back on her throne and folded her hands. You will face the trials of worth, human. 3 ancient tests that will determine if you deserve to breathe the same air as my daughter. If you pass, you may live. If you fail, you will die. Do-hyun's mind was spinning. Trials? Tests? He was an engineer, not a warrior. "And if I refuse?" he asked, surprising himself with his own courage. The Empress smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then I will destroy your planet, and everyone on it." The throne room was silent. The threat was real. The Empress had the power to do exactly what she said. Do-hyun closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of his parents, his friends, the billions of people on Earth who had no idea what was happening. Then he opened his eyes and looked directly at the Empress, ignoring the rules. "I accept." Something flickered in her golden eyes. Surprise? Interest? He could not tell. "Brave," she said softly. "Or stupid. We shall see." She waved her hand, and the guards came to take him away. As Do-hyun was led out of the throne room, he caught a glimpse of violet eyes watching him from behind a pillar. Princess Sira. Their eyes met for just a moment. She looked afraid. She looked hopeful. And she looked at him like he was the most important thing in the universe. Then the doors closed, and she was gone. The first trial began at dawn. Though there was no sun on the ship to mark the hour, guards came for Do-hyun while he was still trying to sleep on the hard bench in his small room. They gave him no food, no water, and no explanation. They simply dragged him through endless corridors until they reached a door marked with ancient symbols. "The Mind Labyrinth," one guard said with a cruel smile. "Most Valori take hours to complete it. Humans have never survived past the first chamber." The door opened, and Do-hyun was pushed inside. He found himself in complete darkness. The door vanished behind him, leaving no way back. The air was thick and heavy, pressing against his skin like wet cloth. And then, the visions began. He saw his mother crying at his funeral. He saw his father growing old alone. He saw Earth burning, destroyed by Valori ships because he had failed. He saw everyone he had ever loved dying, screaming, begging him to save them. Do-hyun fell to his knees, covering his ears. But the sounds came from inside his head. This was a psychic attack, designed to break his mind by showing him his deepest fears. The Valori expected him to fight it, to push back with mental strength. But humans did not have psychic powers. They had something else. Do-hyun stopped fighting. He let the visions come. He let himself feel the fear, the grief, the horror. And then, slowly, he began to accept them. Yes, these things could happen. Yes, he might fail. Yes, everyone he loved might die. These were real fears. He had carried them his whole life, but fear was not the enemy. Fear was a friend, warning him of danger. And friends should be welcomed, not fought. The darkness began to change. The visions grew weaker as he accepted them instead of resisting them. New images appeared, happy memories, moments of love and laughter, the faces of people who believed in him. After what felt like years, a light appeared in the distance. Do-hyun walked toward it on tired legs. He emerged from the mind labyrinth into a white room where a group of Valori judges were waiting. Their faces showed shock. The human had survived. More than that, he had completed the trial in record time. "Impossible," one judge whispered. His brain should have collapsed within minutes, but the results were clear. The first trial was passed. The second trial came the next day. Do-hyun was taken to a small ship and flown to a moon covered in dark forests. The guards gave him nothing, no weapons, no supplies, no communication device. "The hunt," the guard captain explained. "You will survive in this forest for 3 days while our hunters track you. If you last until the time is up, you pass. If they catch you, you die." The ship flew away, leaving Do-hyun alone on an alien world. The forest was nothing like Earth. The trees were black and twisted, reaching toward a gray sky. Strange sounds echoed through the darkness, animal calls. Or maybe something worse. The air smelled like metal and rot. Do-hyun did not panic. He was an engineer. Engineers solved problems. First, he found water by following the direction moss grew on trees. Then he found food, strange fruits that he tested carefully before eating. He built a shelter from fallen branches, hiding it so well that even he had trouble finding it again. The Valori hunters came on the second day. He heard them crashing through the forest, confident and loud. They expected an easy kill. What they found was something different. Do-hyun had spent the night building traps. Simple things, tripwires made from vines, pits covered with leaves, branches bent back and ready to snap. He could not fight the hunters directly. But he did not need to. The first hunter fell into a pit and broke his leg. The second got tangled in vines and spent hours cutting himself free. The third triggered a falling log that knocked him unconscious. By the third day, the remaining hunters were moving slowly, carefully, no longer confident. They had been trained for combat, not for this, not for a prey that thought like no prey they had ever faced. When the ship returned to collect him, Do-hyun was sitting calmly by a small fire, cooking one of the strange fruits. The hunters watched him with something new in their eyes. It was not respect, not exactly. It was fear. The second trial was passed. The third trial was different from the others. There was no maze, no forest. Instead, Do-hyun was brought to a sacred temple deep within the ship. Hundreds of Valori nobles had gathered to watch, including the Empress herself, sitting on a smaller throne of white crystal. In the center of the temple was a circle of light. A priest with silver robes and blind white eyes explained what would happen. "The truth circle reveals all," the priest said. "Step inside, and your soul will be laid bare. Your memories, your fears, your secrets, everything will be shown to this court. Nothing can be hidden. Nothing can be faked." This was the trial Do-hyun feared most. The other two had tested his mind and body. This one would test his heart. He stepped into the circle. The light wrapped around him like warm water. He felt something reaching into his mind, gentle but unstoppable. And then his memories began to play in the air above him. Visible to everyone in the temple, they saw his childhood. A small boy in Busan, building toy rockets from garbage, dreaming of the stars. They saw his struggles. A young man failing exams, losing jobs, crying alone in small apartments. They saw his love, the way he hugged his mother, helped strangers on the street, stayed up all night to help friends with their problems. They saw the day he saved Sira. Not as a heroic act, but as it truly was, a scared man jumping without thinking, acting on pure instinct to help someone who needed him. And they saw what the Valori called soul fire. It appeared as a golden light inside Do-hyun's chest, bright and warm and alive. It was his capacity for love, his empathy, his connection to other living things. It burned stronger than anything the Valori had seen in centuries. The court fell silent. Even the Empress leaned forward, her golden eyes wide. The Valori had lived for millions of years, but their souls had grown cold. They had traded emotion for logic, passion for stability. They had forgotten what it meant to truly feel. This human, this fragile creature who would die in less than a century, had more soul fire than all of them combined. The light faded, and Do-hyun stumbled out of the circle, exhausted. He did not know what they had seen. He only knew that he had hidden nothing, lied about nothing, been nothing but himself. The priest turned to the Empress. "He has passed the truth circle," the priest announced. "His soul is remarkable." Whispers exploded through the court. Some nobles looked angry, others looked confused, a few looked something close to envious. Commander Rin, the captain of the royal guard, pushed through the crowd. His face was twisted with rage. "This is impossible," he shouted. "A human cannot pass our trials. He must have cheated somehow." The Empress raised her hand, and Rin fell silent. "He passed," she said quietly. "I watched him with my own eyes. There was no cheating." She looked at Do-hyun, and for the first time, there was something other than cold judgment in her expression. There was curiosity, maybe even respect. "Take him to rest," she ordered. "The trials are complete." As Do-hyun was led away, he passed Commander Rin. The Valori warrior looked at him with pure hatred. "This is not over, human," Rin whispered. "You may have fooled the Empress, but you have not fooled me." Do-hyun was too tired to respond. He had survived 3 impossible trials. He had proven himself worthy. But as he collapsed onto his bed that night, he knew the real challenges were only beginning. The Empress had not made her final decision. Commander Rin was clearly plotting something, and somewhere on this massive ship, a princess with violet eyes was waiting for him. He closed his eyes and slept, dreaming of golden light and warm hands. 3 days passed after the trials. Do-hyun was moved to better rooms, still small, but now with a real bed, a window showing the stars, and food that actually tasted good. He was not a prisoner anymore. But he was not free either. Guards still stood outside his door. He was still trapped on an alien ship far from home. He spent most of his time looking out the window, thinking about everything that had happened. The trials had changed something inside him. He had faced his fears, survived impossible challenges, and shown his soul to an empire of aliens. He was not the same man who had boarded this ship in terror, but he still did not know what would happen next. On the 4th night, someone knocked on his door. Not the heavy knock of guards, but something softer, more hesitant. "Come in," Do-hyun said, curious. The door opened, and she stepped inside. Princess Sarah. She was even more beautiful than he remembered. Her silver skin glowed softly in the dim light. Her white hair floated around her shoulders like silk in water. And her violet eyes, those eyes he had glimpsed in the corridor, those eyes that had watched him from the shadows, were now looking directly at him, full of emotion he could not name. She was wearing simple clothes, not royal robes, and she was alone, without guards or servants. "Hello, Do-hyun," she said. Her voice was musical but nervous. "Do you remember me?" "Ha." Do-hyun stood slowly. His heart was beating fast. "Yuna," he said. "You were Yuna." She smiled, and it was like watching a flower bloom. "I was. For a little while, I got to be just Yuna, a normal woman on a strange planet, confused and lost and amazed by everything." She walked closer, stopping a few feet away from him. "You saved my life that day. Do you remember?" "I remember," Do-hyun said. "You fell on the tracks. The train was coming. I just acted. I did not think about it." "That is what made it so incredible," Sarah said softly. "On my world, no one acts without thinking. Everything is calculated, planned, measured for advantage. But you just moved. You risked your life for a stranger without any reason." She looked down at her hands, which were trembling slightly. "I have thought about you every day since then. At first, I told myself it was just gratitude. You saved me, so of course I would remember you. But it was more than that." She looked up at him, and he saw tears forming in her violet eyes. "I fell in love with you, Do-hyun. With your kindness, with your smile, with the way you asked if I was okay and then walked away without wanting anything in return. In my entire life, no one has ever treated me like that." Do-hyun did not know what to say. This was too much, too fast. A princess of an alien empire was standing in his room, telling him she loved him. It felt like a dream. "Sarah," he said gently, "I am just a human. I live maybe 80 years if I am lucky. You will live for thousands. I am not special. I am not important. I am just a man who happened to be in the right place at the right time." "No," Sarah said firmly. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth coming from her skin. "You are wrong. The trials proved it. You have more soul fire than anyone my mother has ever seen. You are not just a man. You are something rare and precious and beautiful." She reached out and touched his face. Her hand was soft and warm, and Do-hyun felt electricity run through his body. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I am sorry for bringing you into this. Sorry for putting you in danger. Sorry for everything my mother has done. If I could change it, I would." "Why did you not come to me sooner?" Do-hyun asked. Why did you disappear after I saved you? Pain crossed her face. Because I was afraid. I knew that if my mother found out about you, she would see you as a threat. I thought, if I stayed away, if I forgot about you, you would be safe. She laughed bitterly. But I could not forget. I tried. For 2 years, I tried. And then I made the mistake of telling my handmaiden about you. And she told another servant, and eventually my mother found out. And she summoned me. Yes. Syrah's voice was heavy with guilt. She wanted to see the human who had captured her daughter's heart. She wanted to test you, to break you, to prove that you were nothing special. But I passed the trials. You did. A small smile returned to her face. You did something no human has ever done. You impressed her. I could see it in her eyes during the truth circle. She did not expect to find what she found inside you. Do-hyun thought about everything he had seen in the Empress's throne room. The cold judgment. The threats. The way she spoke about humans like they were insects. Your mother does not approve of us, he said. It was not a question. She does not, Sarah admitted. The Valori have laws about mixing with other species. Laws that have existed for 1,000,000 years. My loving a human is not just forbidden, it is considered a sickness, a corruption of the royal bloodline. Then why are you here? Do-hyun asked. Why risk everything to see me? Sarah took his hands in hers. Her eyes burned with determination. Because I am tired of being afraid. Because I have spent 2 years dreaming of you, wondering what could have been if I had stayed on Earth, if I had told you the truth about who I was. Because life is too short, even for a Valori to waste on regret. She squeezed his hands tightly. I do not know what will happen tomorrow. I do not know if my mother will accept you or execute you. I do not know if we have a future or if this is goodbye, but I know one thing for certain. I love you, Kang Do-hyun, and I wanted to tell you that, at least once, before the universe takes its course. Do-hyun looked at her, this beautiful, impossible creature who had turned his life upside down. A week ago, he had been an ordinary engineer with ordinary problems. Now he was standing in a room on an alien ship, holding hands with a princess who loved him. It was insane. It was terrifying. And somehow, it felt right. I thought about you too, he admitted. After you disappeared, I would walk past that subway station and remember the strange woman with the unusual accent. I wondered where you went, if you were okay, if I would ever see you again. He paused, searching for the right words. I do not know if what I feel is love. I do not know you well enough for that. But I know that when I look at you, I feel something I have never felt before, and I know that I want to find out what that something is. Even if it means facing your mother, your empire, and everything else that comes with it. Sarah's eyes widened. A tear rolled down her silver cheek. You mean that? I mean it. She moved forward and wrapped her arms around him. Do-hyun held her, feeling her heartbeat against his chest faster than a human's. Like a bird's wings, she was warm and soft and real. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the empire, not the dangers, not the millions of miles between her world and his. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other in the starlight. Finally, the door burst open. Commander Rin stood there with 2 guards, his golden eyes blazing with fury. Princess, you are not permitted to be here. Sarah pulled away from Do-hyun slowly. Her face, which had been soft with love, turned cold and royal. I am the heir to the Valori Empire, she said icily. I go where I choose. Your mother will hear of this, Rin said through gritted teeth. Let her hear. Sarah turned back to Do-hyun, and her expression softened again. I will see you again soon. I promise. She walked past Rin without looking at him, disappearing into the corridor like a ghost. Rin stayed behind for a moment, staring at Do-hyun with pure hatred. You have corrupted our princess, he said quietly. I do not care what the trials showed. You are a disease, and I will find a way to cure it. Then he was gone, and the door slammed shut. Do-hyun sat down on his bed, his heart still racing. He touched his cheek where Sarah's hand had been. For the first time since boarding the ship, he smiled. Whatever happened next, at least he knew one thing. He was not alone anymore. Do-hyun did not expect the second summons. When guards came to his door the next morning, he assumed he was being taken to another test, or perhaps to face Commander Rin's anger. Instead, they led him through a different part of the ship, a private area with fewer decorations and quieter halls. They stopped at a simple door. Nothing like the grand entrance to the throne room. "The Empress wishes to speak with you alone," a guard said. "Do not make her wait." The door opened, and Do-hyun stepped inside. The room was small by Valori standards, though still larger than his entire apartment on Earth. It was decorated with soft colors and comfortable furniture. Paintings hung on the walls, strange alien landscapes, moons and suns and planets Do-hyun could not name. A window showed the endless ocean of stars outside. Empress Lyra stood by that window, her back to him. She was not wearing her royal robes. Instead, she wore a simple dress of deep blue, and her white hair was tied back from her face. Without her crown and throne, she looked almost ordinary. "Sit," she said without turning around. Do-hyun found a chair and sat. His heart was pounding, but he forced himself to breathe slowly. He had faced the trials. He could face this. The Empress continued to look at the stars. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. "Do you know how old I am, human?" Do-hyun shook his head, then realized she could not see him. "No, Your Majesty. I have lived for 8,000 years. I have ruled this empire for 3,000 of those. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have watched stars die. I have forgotten more history than your entire species has created." She turned to face him. Without the harsh light of the throne room, her golden eyes seemed less cold, more tired. "And in all that time, I have never felt more uncertain than I do now." She walked to a chair across from him and sat down. For a moment, she was not an empress. She was just a mother, confused and worried about her daughter. "Tell me honestly," she said. "What do you feel for Sarah?" Do-hyun thought carefully before answering. This woman could kill him with a word, but he had promised himself during the truth circle that he would never lie again. "I do not know yet," he admitted. "We have only spoken once. I barely know her. But what I do know, I like. She is brave. She is kind. She sees me as a person, not as a creature. And when I am with her, I feel something I have never felt before. Something like love? Something that could become love, if we had time to find out." The Empress studied him with those ancient eyes. "You speak honestly. That is rare in my court. I have nothing to gain from lying," Do-hyun said. "And I have already shown my soul to your entire empire. What more can I hide?" A ghost of a smile crossed the Empress's face. "True." She was silent for a long moment, looking at something invisible in the distance. "My husband died 4,000 years ago," she said finally. "I have not spoken of him to anyone since. But I will tell you something now, because I think you need to hear it." Do-hyun sat very still, hardly daring to breathe. He was not Valori. He was from a small species we conquered when I was young. My family was furious. The court was scandalized. I did not care. I loved him in a way I have never loved anything else, before or since. Her voice grew heavy with old pain. We had 300 years together before his body simply stopped. His species lived short lives, you see. Shorter than humans. I watched him grow old while I stayed the same. I held him when he died. And then I was alone. She looked at Do-hyun directly. After he was gone, I closed my heart. I focused on my empire, my duty, my power. I had Sarah, and I loved her. But I never let myself feel anything as strong as what I had felt for him. It hurt too much. "I am sorry," Do-hyun said quietly. He meant it. "Do not be sorry. I am telling you this so you understand. I know what my daughter feels. I know the fire that burns in her when she looks at you. I recognize it because I felt it once myself." She leaned forward, her expression intense. "And that is what terrifies me. Because I am human? Because you will die." The words came out harsh, almost angry. You will age. You will weaken. And my daughter will have to watch, year after year, as the man she loves fades away. She will hold your hand at the end and feel her heart shatter. And she will spend the next 5,000 years trying to put the pieces back together. Do-hyun felt the weight of her words pressing down on him. She was not wrong. Human lives were brief. Valori lives were endless. Any relationship between them would end in tragedy. I cannot change what I am, he said. I cannot live longer than my body allows. But I can promise you this. If Sira chooses me, I will spend every moment I have making her happy. I will not waste a single day. And when I am gone, she will have memories worth keeping. Not pain, but joy. Not regret, but gratitude. The Empress stared at him. Something flickered in her eyes, surprise. Perhaps. Or recognition. You remind me of him, she said softly. My husband. He said something similar when my family tried to separate us. He said that a short life filled with love was worth more than a long life filled with nothing. Was he right? The Empress was quiet for a long time. When she finally answered, her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. He was right. Those 300 years were the happiest of my life. And I would trade everything, my throne, my empire, my immortality for one more day with him. She stood abruptly, turning back to the window. Do-hyun saw her shoulders shake slightly, though she made no sound. 8,000 years old. And she was still mourning a love she had lost 40 centuries ago. Your Majesty, Do-hyun said gently. May I ask you something? Ask. If you had the choice again, knowing how it would end, knowing the pain that would come, would you still choose him? The Empress did not hesitate. Without question. Without hesitation. Every time. Then you already know what your daughter will choose. And you know that trying to stop her will only push her away. Silence filled the room. When the Empress turned back to face him, her eyes were wet with tears she was too proud to let fall. But her expression had changed. The cold mask of the ruler had cracked, revealing the mother underneath. You are wiser than your years, human, she said. I begin to see what my daughter sees in you. She walked to him and placed her hand on his shoulder. It was surprisingly warm. I have not made my decision yet. The court still expects me to execute you or send you away. Commander Rin is pressuring me daily to end this embarrassment to the Empire, and there are factions who see my daughter's love for you as a sign of weakness. But you have given me something to think about, something I had forgotten for 4,000 years. She removed her hand and stepped back, becoming the Empress again. Go back to your room. Do not speak of this conversation to anyone. I need time to decide what is right for my daughter, for my empire, and for myself. Do-hyun stood and bowed. Thank you, Your Majesty, for listening and for sharing your story with me. The Empress nodded once, then turned back to the window. As Do-hyun left the room, he heard her voice one more time. So soft, he almost missed it. He would have liked you. My husband. He always had a fondness for brave fools. The door closed behind him, and Do-hyun walked back to his room with a strange new feeling in his chest. Hope. The Empress was not his enemy. She was a mother who had lost too much and feared losing more. And somewhere beneath that cold exterior, she was still the young woman who had fallen in love with someone everyone said she should not love. Maybe there was a chance after all. Commander Rin stood in a dark room deep in the ship's lower levels. Around him were holograms of Valori nobles. Faces hidden in shadow. Voices disguised by technology. These were members of the purist faction, conservatives who believed the Valori Empire had grown weak and soft. The Empress hesitates, Rin said through clenched teeth. I saw it in her eyes after she spoke with the human. She is actually considering accepting him. Unacceptable, a voice crackled through the hologram. A human in the royal family would be the end of our purity. The bloodline would be contaminated forever. The common people would never accept it. Another voice agreed. There would be riots. Rebellions. The empire would tear itself apart. Rin nodded. That is why we must act now, before the Empress makes her decision. The human must be eliminated. And if the Empress discovers our involvement, she will not. Rin's golden eyes gleamed with cold determination. There is a feast tomorrow to celebrate the end of the trials. Hundreds of guests, servants, confusion. An assassin could easily slip through. By the time anyone realizes what happened, the human will be dead, and we will be safely hidden. The holograms murmured approval. Do it, the lead voice commanded. Kill the human. Save our empire. The holograms flickered and disappeared. Rin stood alone in the darkness, smiling. Tomorrow, everything would change. The feast was magnificent. Do-hyun had never seen anything like it. The great hall was filled with tables of crystal and gold, piled high with foods he could not name. Thousands of Valori nobles filled the room, dressed in their finest clothes, talking and laughing and pretending to be happy. Do-hyun sat at a small table near the back, watched by guards who seemed almost bored. He was wearing new clothes that Sira had sent him, a simple black suit that somehow made him feel more confident. But he was still alone, still an outsider in a sea of silver faces. He looked for Sira in the crowd, and found her at the high table, sitting beside her mother. She was wearing a dress of deep violet that matched her eyes, and she was the most beautiful thing in the room. She caught his gaze and smiled secretly. Just for a moment. Before looking away, the Empress sat on her throne, watching everything with those ancient golden eyes. She had not spoken to Do-hyun since their private conversation. He had no idea what she was thinking, or what she had decided. Hours passed. The feast continued. Do-hyun ate strange foods that tasted like nothing on earth, and drank wine that made his head spin slightly. He was starting to relax when he felt a cold sensation run down his spine. Something was wrong. He looked around the hall, searching for the source of his unease. Everything seemed normal. Nobles talking, servants carrying trays, music playing softly in the background. Then he saw them. 3 Valori servants moving through the crowd, getting closer to his table. They walked differently from the others, more purposeful, more focused. And one of them had a hand, hidden inside his coat. Do-hyun's heart began to race. He had survived the hunt. He knew what predators looked like when they were closing in on prey. He stood up slowly, trying not to draw attention. He needed to move, to get away from the crowded hall, to find somewhere safe. Too late. The first assassin pulled a blade from his coat, a weapon that hummed with blue energy. He moved faster than any human could react, crossing the distance in a heartbeat. But Do-hyun was already moving. He grabbed his chair and threw it at the attacker, knocking the blade aside. Then he ducked as a second assassin swung at his head, the energy blade missing him by inches. The hall erupted into chaos. Nobles screamed and ran. Guards drew their weapons. And Do-hyun found himself fighting for his life against 3 trained killers with nothing but his bare hands and his engineer's mind. He could not match their speed or strength, but he could think. He grabbed a tray from a fallen table and used it as a shield, blocking another strike. He threw wine in an assassin's eyes, blinding him temporarily. He kicked a table over, creating a barrier between himself and his attackers. Do-hyun, he heard Sarah's voice cutting through the chaos. She was running toward him, her royal dress torn, a weapon in her hand. She moved like lightning, her blade flashing as she attacked the nearest assassin. They fought side by side, the princess and the engineer, the alien and the human. Sira was fast and powerful, her movements graceful and deadly. Do-hyun was slower but clever, using the environment as a weapon, creating openings for Sira to exploit. Together, they brought down one assassin, then another. The third assassin saw that he was losing. He turned to run, but royal guards blocked his path. He was captured within seconds. The hall fell silent. Empress Lyra rose from her throne, her face a mask of cold fury. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The assassin laughed. "The purists send their regards, Your Majesty. We will not allow the bloodline to be contaminated. Even if it means war." Guards dragged him away. The Empress turned to look at Do-hyun, who was bleeding from a cut on his arm but otherwise unharmed. Then she looked at her daughter, who was standing protectively beside him. "Commander Rin," she said quietly, "come forward." Rin stepped out of the crowd, his face pale. He had not expected the assassination to fail. He had not expected the princess to fight alongside the human. Your Majesty, I had nothing to do with. Your communicator was traced to the Purist network, a guard interrupted. You organized this attack. Rin's expression crumbled. He looked around desperately for allies, but found none. The human is a disease, he shouted. Can you not see it? He has corrupted the princess. He will destroy our empire. Everything we have built. Silence. The Empress's voice was not loud, but it carried a weight that pressed down on everyone in the room. Rin fell to his knees, trembling. You tried to murder a guest in my own hall. You conspired against my throne. You endangered my daughter. Each word was like a hammer striking. You are a traitor, Rin, and you will be treated as one. Guards seized him and dragged him away, screaming curses at Do-hyun. The Empress turned to address the shocked court. Tonight, a faction that calls itself Purist tried to assassinate an innocent man because they feared change. They called it protection of the bloodline. I call it cowardice. She looked at Do-hyun, really looked at him, and something shifted in her expression. This human passed every trial we gave him. He showed more courage, more heart, more fire than most Valori I have known in 8,000 years. And tonight, he fought beside my daughter not for reward or advantage, but because that is simply what he does. He helps, he protects, he cares. The hall was utterly silent. The Purists want war? Then war they shall have. I will not let fear of the new destroy everything I have built. I will not let hatred of the different poison my empire. Quote, she raised her hand, and every Valori in the room knelt. Send word to all systems. Anyone who joins the Purist faction will be considered an enemy of the throne. We will meet them in battle if necessary. And we will win. The declaration echoed through the hall. Do-hyun looked at Sira, who was still standing beside him, her hand on his shoulder. Blood dripped from her blade, but her eyes were bright with pride. My mother does not make decisions lightly, she whispered. But when she decides something, the galaxy moves. Do-hyun nodded, feeling the weight of what had just happened. He had come to this ship, expecting to die. Instead, he had sparked something much larger, a civil war that would reshape an empire. And at his side stood a princess who had just chosen him over tradition, over safety, over everything she had ever known. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The war lasted 3 months. Across 100 star systems, loyal forces clashed with Purist rebels. Battles raged on moons and stations, and in the cold darkness between worlds, ships burned, soldiers died, and slowly, inevitably, the Empress's forces pushed forward. Do-hyun spent those months on the Imperial flagship, helping where he could. He was not a warrior, but he was an engineer, and the Valori found his ideas surprisingly useful. He designed new shield configurations. He found weaknesses in enemy formations. He worked beside alien technicians who slowly stopped seeing him as a curiosity and started seeing him as a colleague. Sarah was rarely there. She led fleets into battle, commanding with a skill that made even veteran admirals respect her. When she returned between campaigns, exhausted and sometimes wounded, she would come to Do-hyun's quarters and collapse into his arms. I missed you, she would whisper. Every moment away felt like forever. I missed you too, he would reply. Come back safe. Always come back safe. They did not talk about the future. There was no time for that. Not during a war. But they both knew that something had to change when the fighting ended. Finally, it did. The last Purist stronghold fell on a gray morning. The rebel leaders were captured. The war was over. Do-hyun stood on the observation deck of the flagship, watching the stars spin slowly past. He had not slept in 2 days. His body ached. His mind was tired. But he was still alive, and that seemed like enough. The door opened behind him. He turned to find Empress Lyra standing there, alone. She looked different from the terrifying ruler he had met months ago. The war had aged her, somehow. Even though Valori did not age, There were shadows under her eyes and a weariness in her posture that had not been there before. "Kang Do-hyun," she said. "Walk with me." They walked together through the ship's corridors, the Empress of a galaxy-spanning civilization and a human engineer from Earth. Guards watched them pass with confusion, but no one dared to question. "I have made my decision," the Empress said as they walked. "I wanted to tell you before I announce it to the court." I. Do-hyun felt his heart tighten. Here it was. After everything, the trials, the assassination, the war, this was the moment that mattered. "I spent 8,000 years believing that the Valori were superior to all other species," the Empress continued. "We lived longer. We thought faster. We built greater things. We looked at humans and saw insects. Creatures barely worth noticing." She stopped walking and turned to face him. "I was wrong." The words hung in the air between them. "You are fragile. You die quickly. You make mistakes constantly. But you have something we lost a long time ago. You have fire. You have passion. You have the ability to love so deeply that it burns brighter than any star." Her golden eyes softened. "My daughter loves you. She loves you in a way I thought was impossible for a Valori. In a way I have not seen since my husband died 4,000 years ago. And that love, that impossible, impractical, beautiful love, is worth protecting." Do-hyun hardly dared to breathe. "I will not execute you. I will not send you away. I will not force you to undergo any more trials or tests." The Empress took a deep breath. "Instead, I will do something that has not been done in a million years of Valori history." She placed her hand over her heart, the Valori gesture of absolute sincerity. "I recognize you, Kang Do-hyun, as worthy of my daughter's affection. Not as a pet or a novelty, but as an equal. You have earned this, through your courage, your honesty, and your soul fire. And anyone who disagrees with my decision will answer to me personally." Do-hyun felt tears forming in his eyes. He had never cried in front of the Empress before, but he could not stop himself now. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving us a chance." The Empress smiled a real smile, warm and almost human. "Thank me by making my daughter happy. That is all I ask." The announcement came the next day. The Empress addressed her entire empire through holographic broadcast, her image appearing on billions of screens across 1,000 worlds. She spoke about the war, about the defeat of the purists, about the future of the Valori people, and then she spoke about Do-hyun. "We have lived 10,000 years believing that strength means coldness, that power means isolation," she said, her voice carrying across the stars. "We conquered galaxies, but lost ourselves. We gained everything and forgot what truly mattered." She paused, looking directly into the broadcast cameras. "This human, this fragile, short-lived creature who came to us as a prisoner, has shown more courage, more fire, more truth than any Valori I have known in centuries. He passed our trials. He fought beside my daughter. He never once lied or manipulated or played political games. He was simply himself, in all his imperfect, beautiful humanity." The Empress raised her chin, her voice growing stronger. "If this is what humanity offers, then perhaps we are not the superior species we believed ourselves to be. Perhaps we are the ones who need to learn. Perhaps they are the ones who can teach us how to feel again." She placed her hand over her heart again. "By my authority as Empress of the Valori, I declare Kang Do-hyun of Earth to be worthy of the royal bloodline. My daughter has chosen him, and I honor her choice. This is my word, and my word is law." The broadcast ended. There were protests, of course. There always are when traditions are broken. But the Empress had spoken. And the war had proven what happened to those who defied her. Slowly, reluctantly, the empire began to accept the impossible. A human would join the royal family. Everything would change. Do-hyun and Sarah stood together on the observation deck that evening, watching distant stars through the great window. They were finally alone, finally free from guards and protocols and political concerns. Just two people who had found each other against all odds. "Are you scared?" Sarah asked, leaning against his shoulder. terrified, Do-hyun admitted. I am a human on an alien ship, about to become part of an imperial family. I have no idea what I am doing. Sira laughed softly. Neither do I. We are both making this up as we go, but we are making it up together. Yes. She turned to look at him, her violet eyes shining. Together. She took his hand, her silver fingers lacing through his brown ones. 2 species. 2 worlds. 2 hearts beating as one. I love you, she said. I have loved you since you pulled me from those tracks and asked if I was okay. I will love you until my last breath. And beyond, if such things are possible. I love you too, Do-hyun replied. I do not know when it started. Maybe when I first saw your eyes watching me from the shadows. Maybe when you fought beside me against the assassins. Maybe it was always there, waiting to be discovered. He squeezed her hand. Whatever time we have, 50 years, 80 years, 100, if I am very lucky, I will spend every moment of it making you happy. I promise. Sira leaned up and kissed him. It was gentle and warm and tasted like starlight. That is all I ever wanted, she whispered. They stayed there for hours, watching the stars together, planning a future that should have been impossible. And in the shadows of the corridor behind them, Empress Lyra watched with tears in her ancient eyes. She remembered another observation deck, another couple, another time when love had seemed impossible. Her husband had been right, all those centuries ago. A short life filled with love was worth more than a long life filled with nothing. She had forgotten that truth for too long. Now, watching her daughter happy in the arms of a human who had changed everything, she remembered. And for the first time in 4,000 years, the Empress of the Valori Empire allowed herself to feel something she had given up on. Hope. The future was uncertain. There would be challenges, difficulties, moments when everything seemed impossible. But there would also be love, laughter, and the kind of brightness that came from 2 souls burning together. Some things, it turned out, transcended species. Some things were worth fighting for. And some things, like a princess and an engineer, like silver hands holding brown ones, like love in the darkness between the stars, were simply meant to be. The galaxy watched. And the galaxy changed, one heartbeat at a time.